Joining us for our weekly chat today is South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem. It's always a pleasure to visit with the governor, and these are busy times. First of all, Governor, Happy New Year to you, and it's legislative time with the session kicking off next week, January 11th. What do you see as the big issues that we should pay attention to and watch for that legislators will have to decide this year?
Well, welcome to 2022. I think a lot of people are anxious for a new year and the opportunities ahead. And when we go into session next week, I think there'll be a lot of discussion about the priorities in South Dakota. So, Mike, you know that we've got a lot of revenue that has come in from the growth in our economy, and we've got some federal dollars that are impacting us as well. And then different policy debates will be going on. So I think the biggest topics may be how we spend those dollars, the actual budget, investment into infrastructure. As people remember from my budget address, I specifically targeted housing and water infrastructure, water projects, helping counties, cities put in that type of costly investment that will help drive down housing costs for individuals so that we can get people that want to come to our state, want to come to our communities in a home that is affordable. And then beyond that, we'll have discussions on education. People know that I've brought a bill that has dealt with blocking critical race theory, which is racism being taught in our schools. Also bringing some discussion on, different things as far as policies on girls' sports. But what we've seen filed already by legislators is 25 to 30 bills just on marijuana reforms. So the medical program in the state has been stood up and is operating, and I think a lot of legislators are looking to make changes to that, different things that were left out of the ballot measure that didn't get addressed, and then also there's some proposals on recreational marijuana as well.
The Secretary of State's office announced on Monday that Constitutional Amendment D has been validated and it will appear on the November ballot. It's a proposal that would expand Medicaid eligibility in South Dakota. Now, Governor, we're one of 12 states that has not accepted federal incentives to expand Medicaid eligibility. What are your opinions on that?
Well, what it does is it moves more people onto a government-run health care system. So that's going to be the fundamental question South Dakotans will have to ask themselves is, do they think the government should be in charge of their health care? A lot of people complain about Medicaid lack of coverage in some areas. Some people would argue that it's the only coverage some people have available to them. We've done some really unique things to open up coverage to people here in the state that's really working. And at the end of the day, the taxpayers will have to figure out if they can afford it. Some of the costs, which are being updated, but we know the costs are going to be tens of millions of dollars of ongoing costs to the state of South Dakota. So that's a huge expansion of government, a huge expansion of spending. And people in the state will have to see if they're willing to, deal with an increase in taxes in order to expand Medicaid, because that is the reality that we're setting ourselves up for if that happens. There's no way to pay for that kind of increase in spending that I can identify without looking at those kind of tax proposals, and that's something that I'm not here to do. I'm not here to increase people's taxes.
Governor, President Biden recently made a comment regarding the coronavirus pandemic, and what he essentially said is that COVID has to be solved at the state level and that there's no federal solution. What did you make of those comments? And I'm particularly interested in that because the president has said that there is no federal solution, but at the same time, he has supported some of the vaccine mandates. It seems like he's talking out of both sides of his mouth here.
Oh, this is one of the most hypocritical things I've ever heard him say. And meanwhile, he says he's not going to help solve the problem that us as governors have to deal with taking care of people. But in the meantime, they're restricting our freedoms, mandating things to the people that they have no right to mandate. And in fact, the state of South Dakota and I have challenged him on 4 of those mandates, which have been upheld in court. And we're winning those victories because the judicial system agrees that the federal government under Joe Biden is taking unprecedented action that it does not have the ability or the authority to do. So we will win these court challenges, but I hope people's eyes are opened up to what this leader in the White House is saying. He is saying one thing and doing a completely different thing, and he's punishing and penalizing the people of this country while he says he's not going to take responsibility for helping us get through it. So, we'll continue doing what we've done in the state of South Dakota, and that's making sure that people have the resources they need, the care that they need, partnering with our healthcare providers to make sure that folks have treatment and the ability to get a vaccine if they want it and to get tests when they need it. But the federal government has taken a completely different approach by promising way too much and never delivering.
We've been hearing a lot about this latest variant of the coronavirus and how highly contagious it is. And there is fear among some governors and folks in the education sort of arena that after the holidays here now, we're going to see a big spike in cases, particularly in our schools, as kids go back into the classroom. Is that a concern of yours or not?
Well, Mike, we shouldn't even be talking about cases. And I've said this 2 years ago. When we first were preparing for the virus to show up in the state of South Dakota, I told folks that in our state, we were going to focus on hospitalization capacity. What matters is taking care of people. And this is a virus. We know we can't stop it. We can slow it down. And there's basic, everyday, common sense things that we can do that. But at the end of the day, what matters for the state of South Dakota is that we have the ability to take care of people should they get sick in our hospital system. So that's a number we'll be monitoring. I know across the country there's different cases that are going on and spiking in different states, and there's a lot of alarm going on in the media and the press. But I believe they're doing that to manipulate people, because I rarely turn on the news or see Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or any of them giving some reality to the situation, talking about the fact that people are getting less sick with this virus, that the vaccine in some cases does appear to help them stay healthier. But at the end of the day, one of the consistent themes is that people need to exercise. They need to be in good shape. They need to take their vitamins, wash their hands. These are all things that make a huge difference in how we deal with this virus. And if they have risk factors, as soon as they start to get sick, go in and get a treatment so that they don't go downhill quickly. And we have all these answers today that we didn't have 2 years ago, yet I still continue to see a lot of the left and a lot of the national media continue to scare people by talking about cases when reality is they should be focusing on how are we doing taking care of people.
Later this week, Governor, the Supreme Court, I believe it's late this week, hears oral arguments over these vaccine mandates. I'm guessing you'll be watching that pretty closely, and I'm guessing that your opinion over the constitutionality of these federal vaccine mandates is not in question in your mind at all.
Exactly. Well, and I've spent a lot of time discussing these mandates and who should be making these kinds of decisions in people's lives. And so, yes, those oral arguments will be heard and debated, and South Dakota is involved in those challenges. At my direction, we became involved in 4 of them, one that challenged federal mandates down to contractors that contract with the federal government, to the OSHA requirements, which said that anybody who employs over 100 people had to comply with vaccine mandates. Also, there was a mandate that came down to receive CMS dollars, which is federal health care dollars. They were going to mandate vaccines. And then also, Head Start. If people wanted to be involved in the Head Start program for our kids, that they had to comply with these mandates. So we challenged every single one of those, and we believe we're going to be successful based on the constitutionality of our position and the lack of constitutionality that the president is making his decisions from.
Because you've never been a supporter of vaccine mandates, Governor, some people out there are of the opinion that you're anti-vaccine. And I guess what I see from you is that you're not anti-vaccine, but you've been firm and consistent in that it should be up to each person each family to decide what's best for them. Am I on the right path there? And is it frustrating for you to see and hear people push back against you saying that you're anti-vaccine when I don't believe you are?
No, I'm definitely not anti-vaccine. And, you know, being a mom, growing up, my kids got vaccines. This COVID virus, I got the vaccine. You know, I don't know if any of my other family members did or not, but frankly, that's not really my position to be asking people if they're getting the vaccine or not. That's their personal health decisions, and I think that's where it needs to stay, is with the individual to make those decisions. So I am certainly not anti-vax. I am very concerned at how hard they are pushing these vaccines, and I'm wondering, constantly questioning the agenda behind it. When someone goes to these lengths to force someone to get a vaccine, I think we should start questioning their motives behind it, and everyone should be asking themselves, why do people want folks to comply and fall in line so quickly? And I think it's to fundamentally remake this country. It is to force people to think that the government is a better person to make their personal decisions than they are, and it's a move towards moving this country away from being a republic.
This week, Governor, I got an email, kind of a fun email, and it had to do with the 45th Annual United Van Lines National Movers Study. And they do this every year, and they look at where people are moving from and where people are moving to. And the data for 2021 shows South Dakota, in terms of inbound moves, people moving to South Dakota, ranked second among all states in the country, trailing only Vermont. And it's interesting, you look at this list, Vermont was number 1, South Dakota 2, South Carolina 3, West Virginia 4, Florida 5, and then you look at the states that people were moving from. And the top-ranked states where people were moving from: California, New York, Illinois, Michigan, New Jersey, Connecticut, Massachusetts. My question is, why are people moving to South Dakota, Christy? What is it about our state that is attracting them?
Well, I think people have learned a lot about South Dakota the last year and a half, and they've learned about our way of life and the special people that we have here. And I think they want to move here because they want to be like us. They want to raise their kids like we've had the ability to raise our children, in safe communities, surrounded by neighbors who care about them, going to church, being in the classroom, getting an education. And, you know, frankly, Mike, a lot of those people that are moving back are our kids and some folks' grandkids, you know, kids that went off to pursue a career or to, you know, try something different in another state for a period of time, decided, you know what, I'm going to pick up and I'm going to move home. It was pretty special back there. So a large number of those individuals are people that have ties to South Dakota and decided they want to be back around family and realized their priorities are to preserve the way of life that we have here and wanted to be a part of it. So I hear people sometimes concerned about it and are concerned about the people coming in, but frankly, for the last 15 to 20 years, we've been losing our kids. We've been losing our young professionals because they couldn't get the careers that they wanted here in South Dakota, and every opportunity was outside the state. Well, that's fundamentally changed the last year and a half. There are opportunities here like we've never seen, jobs here that they can have their choice of. We saw some news reports this week of people leaving their jobs, and some of the gaps in those stories have indicated and lacked or didn't indicate that people were leaving their jobs to take better jobs because they're out there, and those are now things that are in South Dakota that we offer that we weren't able to before. So while we see people moving in, that's good for us. It's a workforce that we've needed for a long time to help our businesses grow. It's people that have been wanting to move home that just didn't have an opportunity to do it. And we'll have a few growing pains as we find housing and all of that for them. But remember, these people working and making good money and taking care of their families helps our economy grow and helps keep our taxes low, too, and lets people have more freedom to spend their dollars in the best way that's good for their family.
Of course, Governor, 2022 is an election year. We've got the midterm elections coming up in November. And there's an Associated Press story today that talks about Senator John Thune, who you know well and have worked very closely with over the years in Congress and now during your time as governor. He was expected to announce his re-election decision over the holidays. That has not happened, and there's some speculation out there that he may step away and retire from Congress. And I'm not asking you to speculate on necessarily what Senator Thune's decision might be, but can you talk a little bit about what he has meant to this state and the political knowledge and value that he brings to South Dakota?
Well, Senator Thune's been a leader for the state for years and years. When I think about the impact he's had, his public service career started back in the 90s and worked and fought for South Dakota farmers and ranchers back then on farm bills and on ethanol policy when the industry was just getting off the ground. Back then he was really focused on making sure that the people in South Dakota were heard and that their priorities were focused on. And many of those industries, agriculture, the CRP program, conservation, ethanol, those policy discussions we've benefited from and been able to grow our economy from as well. So whatever he decides to do is certainly up to him and his family. I think we all should be grateful for his years of service because he was a leader that we could always pick up the phone and call, and half the time when we turned around on a weekend, he was standing there watching our kids' football games or cheering them on at a local track meet too. So he was certainly someone who always remembered where he came from and continued to keep the state number one.
Has Governor Noem made any New Year's resolutions? And if you have, Christy, any that you care to talk about?
I was just talking to my family about this. I told them that it would be super fun in 2022 if we could find a time to get dance lessons. Mike, we think a lot of times we run into these local communities and Brian and I get out there and we have no idea how to even dance or polka or waltz or two-step. And we did this years and years ago when my brother got married. My brothers and sisters and our spouses and our mom took dance lessons together, and it was one of the funnest 6 weeks we'd ever had. So I said to our kids, we should figure out a time we can do that again because, we need a little bit of joy in our lives and spend a little time as families figuring out ways that we can celebrate and be active too. So it's kind of a funny New Year's resolution. I probably got 100 of them, but that's one of them that's a little bit more lighthearted.
Is the first gentleman open to dance lessons?
Oh gosh, if you haven't seen him dance, yeah, he's by far the best dancer in the family. So that's why we all get a little humiliated whenever he starts to dance because he's the gifted one. The rest of us just try to keep up.
Fun note to end the weekly chat on today. Governor, thank you as always for your time, and we will chat again next week.
Oh, you too, Mike. Have a wonderful day.